Well, Jen Lawrence, it is so amazing, great, incredible, all the words, to finally get a chance to talk with you one on one about some like personal things, about some important things that we've been through.
Yeah.
I mean, our story, our how our lives have connected is so incredible, and so welcome to See Your Love of our Summer of
Thank,
Strength series.
thank you. It's amazing to connect with you in this space, and yeah, I'm looking forward to having the time to get a bit personal. So
I know.
this is fabulous. I know. I don't know if listeners know how we met
I don't
because
think so. I think we alluded when you were like a See Your Love co-host. We alluded a little bit about it, but we have never shared the full story of how we got to know each other. So maybe you
yeah.
share your part, your side, and I'll share my side, and we'll kind of come together. But yeah, let's share
Yeah,
about how we
no,
met because that's pretty
absolutely.
amazing.
So, yeah, I had been watching one of your prior shows. This was over a decade ago.
Oh,
And I was blogging at the time and I mentioned the show and one of the my blog readers was one of your show viewers and sort of mentioned like I know Mel, she's great. And I'd mentioned I was moving like to the west part of Toronto and I reached out to you via email and we were just both really busy, right? Moving and working and show and we're just busy. And so then kind of flash forward, I think it was like a year later. I mean, it
mm-hmm,
was a while.
mm-hmm.
And I had, a relationship I'd been in had turned really toxic. I didn't know anybody where I was. And for some reason, I just felt like I should email you. I mean, like, I don't know why I felt that, but I felt that. So I emailed you. And for some reason, you felt like called to respond. So I remember we met at a restaurant. In town and I mean, I think he was your boyfriend at the time, your husband now. I think he was waiting in the car to make sure I was not a lunatic. Because I'm literally like a random woman from the internet, right? Like, we're not supposed to meet these people. but, but like we met, you prayed for me. We shared our stories and there were lots of things we had in common and we ended up, I mean, we were there like 2 or 3 hours after
Mm-hmm.
closing. I mean, luckily you knew the restaurant owner, so it wasn't a problem. But it was and then since then our lives have just keep
Yes.
overlapping and connecting. And at one point I was, co-host on the show and did some writing for you. And, it's interesting because we keep having these
Mm-hmm.
points of commonality and so I feel like we're called to be in each other's lives and
A
so
hundred
it's terrific to be
percent.
here.
And it's so great, and I laugh because if it was me now, I don't know if I would have responded to you in that. I mean, not now, but I mean, I I don't think I've done that since Jen. I don't know if because I have a lot of people that write to me and want to
Of
connect,
course.
but I honestly I'm thinking through as far as I know and remember. I think you've been the only one that I actually like met with. I've written some people, but
Yeah.
what's really neat was I really felt a very strong sense of like being drawn to you when you wrote because I think what you wrote connected with me because I had a few years before gone through a very difficult divorce, like a separation divorce.
Right.
And so and the mutual friend I really respected and used to work with her and I really loved her. So that was really a neat point of connection of trust. And then yeah, you're right. I think Chris did wait outside and I had to call or like I texted like it's okay because you
Right.
never know, right? You never know who you're
You never
meeting.
know. And I'm not used to reaching, like, I'm very much a like, help myself, do it myself. I
Yeah.
don't reach out for help. Like, I just don't. So for me to randomly kind of email someone I didn't even know, like, that is so out of my
But
character.
so
But I
cool.
just,
Jen,
so
it's so cool.
cool.
I'm so glad you did. I mean, I think again, for people who are like, I don't know if I should reach out. I say people should reach out. Just don't have expectations that the person is gonna now like be your best friend and hang out with you. But you just never know.
Yes.
Like I'm
Yeah.
glad I did, and so that's the story's right. I get an email from you. It did take us a year because you moved into like neighborhood area in which I lived.
Yeah.
So that was real, that worked. And then I was so glad I was there for you through and journeyed with you through that really difficult time, which I think for me, it was really good and healing as well. I know that sounds weird while you're going through your difficult time, but just
No, I totally get it.
because
Yeah.
I had been through it, there was still processing. I could understand. I really could have empathy. It wasn't like a sympathy, like, oh yeah, it must feel that way. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been there.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I mean, we've had seasons we were closer, then it's been busy and we've been farther, but there's
Yeah.
definitely a reason that we have connected and remained friends. And so I'm so glad you've reached
Absolutely.
out. I'm so glad you reached out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we both share that, divorce story. I mean, in
Mm-hmm.
my case, it's divorce stories, plural, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But, we understand that season, and it is a tough season. And I think now we're both distanced enough from it that, they always say, write from your scars, not from your wounds. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
speaking about it is the same way. I think we both speak from our scars, not from our wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're able to bring some light to the divorce conversation and all of the complexities. I know we're going to be getting into money today, but for people out there who are feeling very much alone in that process, we've both been through it. We are both weirdly better off for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yes.
is so hard to understand when you're still in that
And
raw season, that
mm-hmm.
at some point in your life you'll be so thankful for the lessons, the people. I mean, I wouldn't have met you without the bumps in
That's
my life. I
true.
wouldn't have met a lot of great people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it is hard when you're in that season of pain to remember that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. And like I said, it's really interesting because I don't think I've ever had an interview like this where I'll be honest and we can talk through our divorce experience with anybody else. There've been people like I've, done 600, 700 interviews, or more. And there have been people I've interviewed who sat on the couch and we talked, but it was more about their book or whatever. I'm saying for me,
Yeah.
it's like as a friend with you to kind of process it a little bit and talk about it because there is a there are a lot of things that I've learned that I wish I'd known before, and that's why I'm so glad we're talking. Because Jen, I think where you're at now, you're gonna be able to help a lot of women and men who are going to be divorcing, who are in the process of, in a lot of very practical ways. You'll help them a lot. But let's talk about this, like kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of how our divorces have impacted us. So let's start with what we've learned about ourselves. We'll start with that and relationships through our divorce experience. What would you say?
Yeah. I mean, certainly after my first divorce with the father of my kids, I didn't heal. I dated. And I had this kind of, uh, you know, Cinderella, Prince Charming is going to come and fix everything, damsel in distress mode. And when we get into some of the money discussions later on, that's actually kind of a money lens people have. But I sort of figured like, I'm in this situation, some guy is going to get me out of this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of working on myself and
Mm-hmm.
my own sense of independence and my own feeling that I'm whole. I think there's this dialogue that like we're walking around being half a person, and until we like link up with someone else, we're not whole. We are made whole. We're born whole. We are whole people. And after you've been through something like divorce, you have to get back in touch with that again. So it's a spiritual journey, it's an emotional journey. And I didn't do that. And instead, I bounced around, dated a bunch of wealthy people thinking that would work. Then, I realized, no, that's not the answer. So then I sort of found a regular guy, thought, okay, that's the answer, got married. That wasn't the answer. And then after that divorce, I mean, luckily or not luckily, because he, went on a business trip and didn't come back at the beginning of COVID. And COVID was such a huge gift. I mean, you would think it would be terrible to have someone leave at the beginning of it. But I had 2 years of really forced introspection and healing
Mm-hmm.
where I learned like I am enough. I'm a great single parent. Like I think I'm a terrific single parent. I mean, I managed to take my kids to Italy in the middle of a pandemic. Like I
Yeah,
figured all that
that's
out.
crazy.
Right?
That's amazing and
You
crazy and
know?
wonderful all at the same time.
And so, I really feel so secure in myself. And I worked on, I did a bunch of coach training, which not only helped, launch my business, but it's also when you're going through the coaching process, you're learning tips to heal yourself. So it was such a deep healing process. And I actually tapped into like traumas and things that I think informed decisions I made around dating and marriage that I had never addressed. So, again, this is where, all things are redeemed. You take the bad of a global pandemic,
Hmm.
and it was bad. For me, though, being forced to be just kind of in my home was such a gift. And so, for me, I learned like Prince Charming is not coming.
Hmm.
God has made you resourceful. We are so resourced. And I think sometimes we sell ourselves short, but we have so many gifts and we just need to tap into it. I'm unique. God made me unique. And I, for my whole, like for 50 years, was like, oh, I'm just eccentric. Like, I've got to fit in. I'm never gonna. And it's like, no. I mean, God made me to love Prada and love a weird little
Yes.
badly behaved dog and like to pour into my kids and to feel the need to go to Europe in the middle of a pandemic.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, he may have made me weird, but that's cool. Like,
Totally cool.
God loves me. I love me. My ride or die people love me. So if someone doesn't love me, that doesn't mean I'm
Mm.
unloved. It's just like that wasn't a fit. And that's okay. Like if I go into a change room at a store and I put on a pair of pants and the pants doesn't fit, I don't think, oh, I'm a terrible person.
Yeah,
I'm like, I need another pair of pants. So, I
exactly.
mean, not that I want to keep going through pairs of pants in this lifetime. But the problem isn't necessarily with you. And I think so much of the dialogue around divorce is that the problem is you.
Mm.
That there's something wrong with you, that
Mm.
you've been rejected because there is something flawed.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's just not a fit, particularly if you were making a choice in partner from a place of pain. And so it's that knowing that I had to get right with myself
Hmm.
was the primary thing I needed to do. And again, the gift of COVID because I didn't really have much choice. I couldn't have gone out there dating if I wanted
Right.
to.
Wow,
So,
that's a good perspective. That really is good. I love that. Um, man, Jen, that's good. There's some really good learnings there. Uh, I think the biggest learning through my divorce when I went to my therapist and on the
yeah.
whiteboard she was writing out you know uh what I wanted in a man, and then when I chose my first husband, there was some incongruencies there. There was some things, and I think, uh, yeah, I think what I thought that I needed for myself weren't actually really good things for myself. I was looking
Yeah.
for wealth, security, a certain
Yeah.
type of person based on maybe what I thought the world expected of me, what would look good on me, uh,
Yes.
that would make me look better, be more affluent, be looking more successful. So put all that in, got the guy.
Yeah.
And I think for both of us, we came in with hugely unrealistic expectations and unfair expectations of one another, which none of us
Yeah.
could measure up to. Deeply disappointed, very lonely in the marriage. And I think, and I say this to single friends, like being lonely in a marriage is worse than I think being lonely, because I have been single, being lonely single,
Yeah.
because you actually
I
have somebody
agree.
with you, but you are not choosing one another and you're turning your back in bed and feeling so alone
Yeah.
when somebody is right there beside you. It's a
I
horrible
totally
feeling.
agree.
Um,
It is.
so I think the learning was, when I went back to therapy and I was looking kind of for what would be, if I decided to get married again, it was all these things I didn't want in a man. And then eventually, Chris, my now, second husband, is all the things I didn't want. And yet, are all the things that are good for me, which is really funny. I'm still trying to unpack that, Jen, with my therapist. Like, what was that? Like, no way. And then Everything of the nose is Chris. It's hilarious. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't
You
want,
guys are so perfect together, and yet you are like, I would not have put you together, but
neither
I
would
can't imagine
I.
anyone more perfect.
Thank you.
I cannot imagine anyone
Yeah,
more
neither would
perfect.
I. Neither would I. But I think
Yeah.
the learning in that was really interesting because I think we do have a culture and people who want to have a certain look and way, but that the person might not actually have great character or be the right fit for you. And that was a big
Yeah.
learning. And I think you're right. I think there was an expectation that marriage was going to make me whole and make me feel better about
Hmm.
myself, and like that was going to be all the issues I've had. That was going to be resolved and solved by marriage. No, no, no. If I can say that,
Yeah.
and it did. It did
Yeah.
give me a chance when I was going through my separation to actually get in touch with myself, get a hold of myself, and say, Mel, these are like your own issues. You need to work on this. Another person can't fix that.
Yeah.
Another person can't take that. And so I do own that. I mean, it obviously takes two in a
Yeah.
breaking of a marriage, but so I had to kind of own my stuff. Um, but
Yeah.
there was a lot of learning. I love that what you're saying about being whole because I think a lot of people go into a marriage going, "This person's going to make me better. I'll feel more whole
Yeah.
with it." Right?
Yeah. And a lot of those same characteristics will spill over into money because a lot of people think money will make them whole. If only I could be
Yeah.
wealthy, I would be X. If only I would get this job, I would be Y. And again, it comes down to you are whole. A relationship, money, a job, it's not going to get you that sense of wholeness. That sense of wholeness is you and your relationship with, God, your higher power.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes you feel whole,
Mm-hmm.
is that knowledge that you are enough all on your own. And then if you happen to get the job, if you meet the partner, it's additive and it makes you more you,
Mm.
but you've got to be you
Mm-hmm.
first. You can't be like half of you.
Yeah.
Or the other stuff is just, it's actually going to amplify the problems rather than solving the
Oh,
problems.
that's good. So in that, why did you decide to become a divorce coach? I mean, obviously you could say, well, it's because I've been divorced, but to get into that, what was the motivation for you? Why was it important to kind of move into this? Because I mean, you're written a book. You were like business coach. I mean, you are probably one of the smartest, honestly, women I know.
Oh,
An incredible writer, funny, witty, like
it's
all the things, Jen.
nice.
Honestly,
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
you moved from there to then this new role. Why?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was just the difference between my first divorce and my second divorce. And it was knowing what you're doing, kind of having a roadmap, because I knew how to get a lawyer and how to separate the finances. And, I knew that stuff. So I could actually just work on my healing.
Mm,
And so I recognize that there are a lot of, people out there, and I mostly work with, midlife women facing divorce, often unwanted divorce, and
mm,
often these are women who haven't worked outside the home, so there's a feeling of vulnerability. Um, and, knowing the process and getting a good lawyer to advise you and sort of understanding the process then lets you heal. And I also know that trying to make all of these complex money decisions, there are certain kind of quick fixes you can put into place, like breathing exercises to get your central nervous system calmed. It can help you make those hard decisions even when you're not fully healed. So then you can move to a place when you're healed. Because if you're worried about like not being able to pay the mortgage or, where you're going to get money for the next tank of gas, like you can't heal
mm,
and you can't move forward into even a space of healing.
mm,
And so, divorce is one of those times where, if you're facing, say, a death in the family, like people often will leave you alone. They'll bring the casseroles, they'll have space for you. They're not saying, okay, do you want this amount of spousal support or do you want this percentage of the assets? And all of a sudden you're trying to calculate like stock options. And I mean, you're not able to do that. And so a coach helps walk you through that process. And then the coaching practice has actually evolved because some not, people who've hired me have non-divorcing
mm,
friends who want to figure out things like, The kids have left the nest. What do I do next? So vocational coaching. So some of the stuff I've done through divorce coaching, I'm now doing for non-divorcing people,
Wow.
because the reality is, whenever you've gone through a period of change, whether that's, kids leaving the nest, a financial change, a job loss, a divorce, an illness, that often changes your perspective on what you want to do in life.
Hmm.
And, just having someone kind of walk you through some of the options can be helpful. So that's, I moved into that. I basically used all of the techniques I researched to help myself, and I use them to help other people now. So
Yeah.
it's a hugely fulfilling. Yeah, I love
Yeah, and I
it.
love
I
that
love
that you
it.
can take something that's like, like, it could be devastating and challenging, but then sitting and thinking, wait a second, if I'm going through this, then there's a ton of other women who are going through this, and who's helping them?
Yeah.
And I love how you
Yeah.
use that, Jen, to then become this coach for people who are struggling, have struggled with what you did. Like, I love that when I hear that, especially for women who start something new based out of something that either was really hard and said,
Yes.
oh, there's a hole there. I didn't get that kind of support and what I needed. I could be that person then for the next woman and the next woman.
Yeah.
That's really, I commend you on
And
that. I love
making
that.
financial
Mm,
decisions, because I mean, I used to be an investment banker. I've got an MBA with finance. I still found it impossible to make financial
mm,
decisions when I was stressed. And, I became aware of things like financial abuse, like just so aware that there are so many women who don't touch money. Like, people tend to split what happens in a marriage, right? One party might take care of the money, the other party might, take care of kids or
mm.
work or do whatever. And so I'm like, if I, as an investment banker, am finding this money thing so complex, um, I can help other people. So I became a certified divorce financial analyst, because it's just acknowledging that when your head is spinning and you can barely get out of bed, and then you're supposed to go meet with a wealth manager who's throwing all of these acronyms at
Right?
you, and you're just like, take me away from
Hmm.
this. Um, and so, some of what I'm doing even is putting together information for, banking folks and stuff, to understand things like financial abuse and money trauma.
Wow.
Because, people going through a hard time, when you're having to deal with anything financial, you're just not in the right headspace to make great decisions.
Yeah.
So often you need someone to be helpful.
It's so good. And you're perfect for the series or SOS because I can imagine a ton of women going SOS. It's really like help, but it's also the Summer of Strength series. And so I was like when we started talking, when we had that lunch, a little while ago, Jen, and you started talking about what you were doing. I was like, I have to get you on because you're the perfect person to help strengthen and support women who are going through this. I think for me, that was one of the biggest things. Like, I had no idea. Like, it was like we sold the house. I quit my job thinking that I was going to move with him. The money from the house went to pay off some debt, but also into his business. And I was left with like nothing. Like, I had nothing. I moved into a
Yeah.
girlfriend's house in her guest room
Yeah.
because
And that's
you know what I
very
mean? Like,
common.
I had no understanding. And then I'm like, what do I do? How do I find a job? Do I go on EI? It was a
Yeah.
horrible dark time. I would say out of anything, that was one of the hardest things for me. It's like then I had to pay a monthly, amount in storage. I had to pay my
Yeah.
car. I still had my phone. And
Yeah.
now I don't have two incomes and I don't have a
Yeah.
job. What do I
And there's so
do?
much shame. And there's
Oh,
so much shame, and so people
yes.
don't ask, because it's relationships and it's money and it's all these things people don't
Yes.
talk about because it's so taboo. And so, so many women who I talk to, and I do some pro bono stuff, they won't see a lawyer because they've been told, don't hire a lawyer, they're expensive, you should try to mediate, you should try to have discussions. And I say, get a lawyer, because the lawyer can tell you your options. There's legal aid, there's legal financing, there are ways to access bits of help, because they can let you know what part of the assets are yours, what support might you be entitled to. So at least you have a picture of what your financial options
Yeah.
are. If financial abuse has just been acknowledged under the new Divorce Act in
Okay.
Canada as being an element of coercive control, because up until now, abuse was considered only physical abuse. Whereas there's so many women who couldn't leave or they were left destitute.
Wow.
And, it was never
Mm-hmm.
acknowledged that finances, like money, can be a real weapon.
Mm-hmm.
It can be used as a real weapon against people. And so, giving people permission to have discussions about, money and the end of a relationship, like for women and particularly women in Christian communities, these things just are not
No, they're not.
discussed. And so it's, saying you can get a lawyer. You need to learn some financial literacy. It's so important. Like a lot of women don't have credit. They'll have a supplementary credit card that's part of their husband's, particularly if they're like a stay-at-home
Mm-hmm.
mom. And then they don't have a credit history and they can't rent an apartment. And so,
Wow.
like, all of these things so often come as
Mm-hmm.
surprises. And so, part of what I say is, we weren't taught in school about this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. The financial industry deliberately keeps things complex so that we'll hire professionals. And I mean, I love financial professionals. I have a wealth manager myself. But often it's up to us to say, look, you've just said like 8 acronyms at me, RESPs and
Mm-hmm.
RSP. Like, I don't know what any of this is. That's like, you're not supposed to. We aren't born knowing this stuff, and it shouldn't be shameful. Like,
Mm.
there's so much shame
Mm.
in the personal finance community. Like, you're poor because you drank too many lattes, and you're poor because you ate too much avocado toast. And that's just not
Oh,
correct.
thank you for saying
Like,
that. No, because I
right?
no, but that's
Lattes
that
are
that
not.
people have said that. Like you've done that and that's why you don't have money.
Well, and it's like, and there's so much, I mean, there's so much of a history of systemic discrimination within money. Like, if you are female, if you have disabilities, if you are a person of color. I mean, for a long time, people of color could not get mortgages, women couldn't own property. So
Oh.
we have a system of that was built on systemic discrimination, and it's getting better. But I mean, at the end of the day, when people get very prideful about, the homes they own, it's like, basically, you've made money in a system built on slavery and stolen land. So I
Wow.
don't want to be the heavy here,
Mm-hmm.
but let's not be prideful about this.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean like, let's go to the casino and gamble away all the money and not feed our children. But it's good stewardship has nothing to do with wealth, because a lot of wealth has been inherited.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on your background, your story. Like a lot of people who have come from places where, say, land has been seized through war or corrupt governments, why would they then come here and have faith to put a bunch of money into a housing system when their whole life they've been told that's not secure? What is secure is your memories. No one can take away your memories. So isn't it smarter to spend money on travel and dinners out with friends and building a beautiful life with your community? Because no one can ever take that away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've come from a system where the banking system is corrupt, or the housing, land has been seized from
Mm-hmm.
you, I mean, we have this very narrow perspective that the smart thing to do is to work really, really, really hard. Well, to study really, really hard, and then work really, really hard, and then amass a bunch of money and buy a big house, and then retire at 65 and go to Florida. And that's it. And if you don't do that, then you're some kind of failure when it
And
comes to money, and it's because you
okay,
bought too many
okay, so here's
lattes.
my question,
It's
Jen.
not true.
Who created that? Who made that up? Because I even heard that coming from Asia at 13 that somehow I remember that in my psyche like that was the kind of trajectory of every person. And I remember thinking, from who? What standard? Why? And then I saw
Yeah.
friends do all that to achieve that. But their lives
Yeah.
were not happy, fulfilling, flourishing, thriving. It's it and so but
No.
I don't know where that came from. That's actually so funny. I've never
Well,
asked anybody that.
it's the lens. The lens is white, the lens is
Mm-hmm.
patriarchal, the lens is capitalism, and we don't ever challenge
Mm.
that. Like I don't remember reading the Bible story where Jesus studied really, really hard and then went and got the job and worked away and then got the
Yeah,
house. And
exactly.
I mean, Paul alludes to the fact he was wealthy, that Jesus was wealthy, and then gave up the wealth so that we could ultimately become
Mhm.
wealthy. But I don't remember seeing his like 10-year plan or anything about his mortgage
Mhm.
payments because they had different lenses.
Mm.
I think in North America, there's this very narrow lens, and it's mixed in with that kind of puritanical culture that if we just, are good men and good women and toil away and make money for companies, that somehow we will be rewarded with this easy
Mm.
life. And that's just not the case. And again, that doesn't mean you're not a good financial steward, but good financial stewardship means different things for different people. For me, I like taking my kids on
Mhm.
trips. For someone else, it might be they want their kids to be in a bigger house or have a car. Or for some people, it's, they want one parent at home. For other people, they have different, but we've been taught there's one way. And that way is typically, it's you work, you save, you have a bunch in savings, you don't spend too much, someone else defines what too much is. And that's why often in marriage there's friction. Because if one person's following that, especially if they're in that kind of accumulator mindset, because that's really rewarded by
Mhm.
society, the person who might believe that no, money is for sharing, money is for giving away, money is for beautiful experiences, the other person's going to say, no, no, that's
Mhm.
wrong because I was told we had to put this much in an envelope and when it's gone, it's gone. And you bought too many lattes and now we don't have a house. And that's just not
Wow. Yeah,
true. And it's not helpful, particularly within a
that is
marriage.
powerful. You just said so many things I'm trying to process. I'm like writing things down because I'm like, I got to sit on that and think through that. So let's do this then. Like, what advice then? So we've got, a woman listening who is like, um, I just found out, or I'm in the midst of, I'm going through a divorce and I am completely overwhelmed. They find themselves
Yes.
unchosen and they are
Hmm.
emotionally wrecked, maybe even in the fetal position. Um, what would you say would be the first one, two things that they should do financially? Because I think that's where the emotional stuff, yes. Like I immediately went to a
Yes.
therapist. I told my very closest friends, like to pray, support, but not a lot. So with those two things, but financially, what would you say to her? Would be the first few
Yeah.
things.
Try to get enough money together to hire a lawyer for a couple of
Okay.
hours. So if you can get, a couple $1,000 together in case something happens. I mean, in marriages, people often think, oh, it'll be amicable, but it isn't always amicable. And so you need to make sure that you and your kids are safe. And the reality is, money gives you
Mm-hmm.
options. So whether that's borrowing from friends, whether that's selling a ring,
Mm-hmm.
whether
Yep.
that's doing a little side hustle, or selling clothes on, one of these
Yep.
selling sites, get together some money. And then I would call a lawyer and I would say, I need an hour of your time and try to gather up the information. The key thing you need to know is you have access to bank accounts.
Okay.
Even if you've not made money like working outside the home, typically, unless there's inheritances or prenups or things like that, you're entitled to 50% of the assets made in the course of the marriage. So if you don't have access to bank accounts, a lawyer can get you access to bank accounts. If your spouse is spending you into bankruptcy, you can freeze accounts. So often having a lawyer be very strategic and making sure you have access to money is really
Okay.
key. Women's shelters can help you with that. You don't have to move into a room to access their help. You can call them and they can connect you often with legal aid. And,
Mm-hmm.
law schools often have some free services or lower cost services. So find out your rights, your obligations to protect you and your kids. Because once you have you're in your apartment, you're feeling safe and secure, you've got some money, then you're starting to be in a mindset to be able to make longer term decisions. But until you feel safe, your brain will literally not allow you to make those
Mm-hmm.
decisions. You're in fight, flight, or freeze. You're not in that logical decision making point.
Wow. That's really good.
So I would say that for
Yeah,
women.
I would, I mean, I just, think this is so great, Jen, because like you don't get that kind of very practical wisdom. I'll be honest, like even within the church context, it's a lot of other things they want you to work on. And and
Yeah.
it's great. I know that people are like, let's pray for reconciliation and restoration, and that can happen. But more than not, a divorce will proceed, a separation will proceed, and then you don't have,
Yes.
no one's giving you what you're saying, information to say, well, what about your monies? Because I'm telling you, when I was
Yeah.
where I was at, huge stress was caused internal emotional anxiousness and panic, sleepless nights, lots of
Yeah.
crying, and then having to find a job on top of being abandoned. You're not even in your right mind. I can't even
It's too
I
much.
think I went through, Jen, some interviews. I don't even remember them because I was so
Yeah.
undone, and I was just trying to get a job because I needed money. And I don't even remember those
Yeah.
interviews. I don't even know. I mean, thank goodness there was um, a community and people. That's the other thing that helped me get some jobs to help me get on my feet. But man, that was not easy.
Yes.
And it could have been a lot easier if I had
No.
heard what you're saying now, to have helped me in that space.
Yeah. And ask for financial help. Like again, there's so much shame around money, but I like to say thoughts and prayers don't pay the
No.
bills. So if someone says, "What can I do for you?" You know what? I would, can you lend me $300 because I need to hire
Yeah.
45 minutes of a lawyer's time. And then, the money will be freed up and at some point I'll be on my feet and I'll pay you back, but I need that. Thoughts and prayers also, but there is a
Yes.
reality of paying the rent.
Yes.
And so don't be ashamed. Again, it's not like, oh, look at you, can't even keep a man and now you need money. It has nothing to do with that. There's so much shame around the end of a relationship and there's so much shame around money. And divorce really compounds
Mm-hmm.
those. And I find within the Christian community, I mean, it's interesting when you look at the Bible and what are some of the things that are said about money, because it's two very different. Like there are Christians who take vows of poverty because it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich man into heaven. There's also the John 10:10 prosperity gospel folks who were saying, I came to give you
Mm-hmm.
abundance. Jesus came to give us abundance, and it should be overflowing. And if you don't have abundance, does God
Mm-hmm.
really love you? And so in the church, you have people who are literally taking diametrically opposite approaches. So it's no wonder we're so
Good.
confused. And the reality is, I mean, God loves you if you're rich. God loves you if you're poor. Now, God does not want you to worship money. That is
Mm-hmm.
super clear. You're not to worship money because you can't serve God in money. Don't let money get in the way of your faith or values. Don't make money by exploiting
Mm-hmm.
people or oppressing the poor. Don't be arrogant and share. That's what the Bible says
Mm-hmm.
about money. It doesn't opine on like how much should you have, how much should you save, how long a mortgage should you take. I mean, it's just not there because that's not really how money
Mm-hmm.
works. Money's just this energy exchange, so we don't have to have like a barter system
Oh,
or
let's go back
whatever,
to the
right? Because
barter
the
system,
barter
Jen.
system.
I'll barter your Pradas, and you can barter my vintage Nana's purse that's hanging on my wall. Something like that.
Well, I mean, right? Money was never supposed to be this heavy. Now, we're not supposed to use it as a weapon. Just like we're not supposed to use
Right.
anything as a weapon. We're not supposed to use it to oppress people. And, in the Bible, if you say, does God love rich people or poor people more? Well, a lot more nice
The
things are
poor.
said about the poor. So again, that shame around money, whether it's the shame of having too much or not enough or not spending it in the right way, that needs to be divorced from
Mm-hmm.
faith. So, when you're looking at dealing with money in divorce, after divorce, in a marriage, it has nothing to do with like your value to God or there's no, I mean, I know lots of people have made these sort of, Jesus wants you to be rich, here's the budget you should follow. If you give 10% to this guy, he'll
Mm.
10x your money in
Oh.
terms of profits. I mean, there's a lot of really
Mm-hmm.
toxic messaging out there. The reality is, um, God loves you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He, and you should be a good steward of your money. because you want your money to be able to help the people in your life, to help people who need it. So, should you be spending all of your money on Prada? Probably not, because that's not great stewardship. Should you be saving and hoarding all of it and never giving any of it and never using it to bring joy? That's equally
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional.
That's good.
So it's a balanced approach. And unfortunately, most of us have childhoods. We come out of systems where we've experienced, racism and sexism and ableism. And so a lot of us have toxic money stories that then carry into our marriages, they carry into our divorces. And it's not money itself that is the problem, it's our money
Hmm.
stories. But luckily, we can change our money stories.
That's,
That's the good
ooh,
news. You can change your
writing that
money
the
stories anytime
money
you want.
stories. Now, do those come mainly from like family of origin, or you just pick those up along the way? Like, what does that mean? Your money story?
Yeah, I mean, it's considered to be certainly your family of
Yeah.
origin. Like if there was money scarcity, if you lost a
Right.
house, or there was always a lot of stress around paying the rent or the end of the month, you will have picked up on that. And for some people, it means they want nothing to do with money. For others, it means they worship
Hmm.
money and they're workaholics. And so, how you use that story in your life is quite individual. There's more and more thought that a lot of the systemic money things go back
Wow.
generations.
Okay.
If your land was taken from you, that is essentially in your DNA. And so, a lot of kind of racialized
Mm.
issues and issues of gender, they go way back. And so it's not like you can, go and get hypnotized and fix it
Right.
or something. It's recognizing this is my story and this is what is not serving me
Hmm.
well. And that's where having, knowing your money type can help you get a little bit of distance from it, because so often we use these ugly words, particularly in marital fights. You're a cheapskate. You're going to spend us into the
Mhm.
poorhouse. You're a gambler, right? You think money grows on trees. These are all acknowledging our money stories and patterns that our partners have recognized. But rather than saying you're a cheapskate, let's try to use different language and get underneath
Hmm.
that, because people's essential money qualities won't change, but more and more we can rely on our
Hmm.
strengths, and more we can tackle our challenge areas. And if we can do that openly and without judgment using a different language, it's just like the love languages. Rather than saying, you never bring me a cup of tea or whatever, it's like, oh, my love language is acts of
Hmm.
service. I would love it if you would bring me a cup
Right.
of tea. It's it's the same thing, but what comes across as nagging without that love language knowledge, it's nagging. When you have the love language knowledge, you can take a step back and say, oh, wait a minute. I'm feeling unseen and unheard
Oh.
and
Hmm.
unloved because my love languages aren't being
Right.
spoken. And the exact holds true for money
Yeah. And I've never. This
languages.
was so fascinating when we were having our lunch together, and you were sharing what you were doing, and all of a sudden you said to me, there is a like a 8 languages of money. And I was like, what? You mean like love languages? Like my 5 languages of love? You're like, well, no, there's 8 languages of money. And I'm like, I have never heard this before. I wish I had heard this, because I
Yeah.
think, in all honesty, that's one of the hard conversations Chris and I have. That's a hard conversation many of my friends in relationships have. Money, because it seems like
Yes.
the opposites attract in money as well. Um, and
Totally.
it is like
Yes.
one of the, like, sex and money. It's one of the things that in a relationship, and communication, but what we struggle
Yes.
with. And I wish, and I want us to go through those, because it's astounding that we've never heard this. And this is what kind of grieves me a bit, Jen. Like, we never really taught this in school. Our parents never really talked about it.
Yeah.
Like, we'd see bits of it as kids, how your parents would manage the money. But you're right. They would share their money stories and then have those kinds of things said. You're not being taught this in secondary or like post secondary. And so it's like you're having to
No.
find your way to figure out money and it's
That's
so
it.
hard. And then you go into a marriage and you're like, oh, he is a cheapskate and I spend too much and we can't see eye to
Well,
eye, and then big blow ups, you know? And so I think this is so
absolutely.
important.
I know. Instead of teaching you about the isosceles triangle or whatever, why aren't they
Yeah,
teaching
how to,
this?
yeah,
This is
exactly. It's
very
like how to
useful.
use,
But
all of these things. I'm like, but this would really help young people if they knew this. So if you can, I would love to talk about the eight languages of
yeah,
money, because I think that is going to be life changing and really strengthening our listeners and viewers who are like, I've never heard this. I need this to understand this. All right,
yeah.
I'm ready. I'm going to take notes.
Yeah,
So just
absolutely. So it's a coach. Her name is Kendall Summerhawk, and she came up with this approach to money called Sacred Money Archetypes, and it's 8 different money types, and it falls along the lines of money dysfunction, which has been studied by financial psychologists. But she just made it this very digestible, kind of easy to access thing. So there's basically 8 types. So there's the ruler. That's like money is used to build
hmm,
my empire. So these are like entrepreneurs and leaders, and this is the ruler type. The romantic is money is there to create beautiful experiences. Fashion, beautiful
we're
dinners.
both like this. I'm
We're
saying to
both
Jen, I'm looking at Jen
romantics.
like, yeah, yeah,
I know that because when we go for lunch,
yeah,
we
we
just
do.
like order all the appetizers.
We do. And we have great outfits on, and we're like, oh, that looks great, that looks great. Let's share a ton of appetizers that don't even fit on the table because we want it all.
So that's,
Mhm.
the romantic. The nurturer is money is there to help people
Mm,
I love. They're often supporting family with their money. The maverick is money's there for taking risks. This is your, investor, your founder. It can be gamblers. Money's there for risks and to make more. The connector is, I call it the damsel in distress because I have a lot of this in me. It's that other people need to take care of my money
mm,
needs. I don't want to deal with money. I want someone else to deal with it. The alchemist is the money grows on trees. Like, don't worry about it. The money will come. And
mm,
it does. But it drives like other
mhm,
types crazy. The accumulator. This is your classic cheapskate. Money is for saving. There's a rainy day coming and you'll regret spending the
yeah,
money on the lattes. But again, that's only 1 in 8. And yet, a lot of personal finance people, it focuses on the
mm,
accumulator only. And yet, it's only one of the 8. And the celebrity, money's for splashing around. They love their
mm,
Louis, they love their bottle service at restaurants. That's what money's for. It's for making other people
mm,
feel fabulous. So, depending on your type, like none are bad, none are good. All have strengths and all have
mm,
problems. So, in acknowledging this and in figuring out, and I have a quiz you can take. You can access it online if you just Google Sacred Money Archetypes or if you come to the midlifeedit.com. I have some information, but basically, if you know your type and you know your partner's type, you can start to have conversations in a more
mm,
loving way. And where you start is that neither of our perspectives are bad, and we acknowledge that we each want to be a good steward of our wealth and support
mhm,
our family. Because ultimately, that is true. You're just likely doing it in really
mhm,
different ways. And so, if, say, I mean, I'll use the female example just because I relate to it. The wife really wants to take the kids overseas to meet the extended family because great grandma is getting old and this may be
mhm,
the last time. We've gone through COVID, the time is now. He is an accumulator. He's looking at the news saying interest
mhm,
rates are going up and the economy, and this is a terrible time. And so they're locked into this battle where he thinks she's trying to spend money that they don't have. And she thinks he's trying to keep the children away
mm.
from great grandma who may not be
Right.
there in a year. And they battle and they battle and they battle and they battle. Whereas you're cheap and you spend too much and you're a shopper. If instead they were to sit down and, let's say the wife wants to sit the husband down and say, I want you to know that I'm committed to being a good steward of our wealth. Based on my background, I'm a romantic. I know that memories are the only thing that cannot be taken
Mm.
away from us, right? Like the stock market can be down, the housing market can crash. Memories are there forever. And so, to be a steward of our wealth for our family, I think creating memories, introducing our children to their family is really important. Like, I think that is for the good of
Hmm.
our family. But I acknowledge that you are an accumulator. You show love by having a big bank account so that if you lose your job or the kids want to go to an expensive college, that we don't have to worry. Like, we both love our family so much. We have really different approaches to how that should happen. So I'm acknowledging you're not wrong or cheap. You're an accumulator, and yeah, the news is
Hmm.
scary. But we also have a window on the kids meeting great grandma. Can we sit down and go through our budget and see if we can find room and space to make this trip happen?
Mm.
And that might mean, at that point, that might mean you want to give up the daily lattes to pay for the airfare. But you're doing it lovingly and willingly and with open
Mm.
eyes. It's not because buying lattes is inherently wrong. It's because, you have so much money and you can either make more. She could say, I'm going to get a part-time job so we can make this happen. Or I'm going to spend less in this area to make things happen. Or, we'll delay, say, we'll go to this trip, but then we'll, save more the next year or put off the Florida
Right.
trip or whatever. By using the languages, you're not digging into that my view of money is superior to your view of money. Or I read this book by this budgeting expert who says that trips are frivolous. Because I can tell you, if you don't go and great grandma passes away, the
Hmm.
resentment is going to be huge because you can't
Yeah.
get that back. And same with if they do go and he loses the job and then it's hard to pay the mortgage, there's going to be resentment. If you can collectively figure out a plan that acknowledges both of your money languages, it's going to be so much more
Jen, that,
effective. And you don't need to have
yeah,
a partner to
Jen,
do this
yeah,
on your own. What is
yeah,
your own
Jen, that's
language?
amazing. Like, I think about my first marriage, and that was the big issue. So he was, he loved the home. We bought a home. He wanted to put the money into the home, the fence, the great backyard, landscaping, the home. And I, who never really, honestly, per se, wanted to buy a home because I always felt that that was holding me back, wanted to go on trips. I wanted to go on vacations. I wanted to go eat out with friends. I wanted to experience life. And we got started getting resentful because I was like, I don't want to spend 5 grand on this new air conditioning system and stones for the garden when 5 grand could get us to
Right.
Belize and Costa Rica for an incredible beach experience. And he's going,
Yeah.
yes, but that's fleeting for 2 weeks. We would then have great air conditioning and flagstone, stones on our home that will have longer. And we could not, Jen,
Right.
get to the middle. Like it was so. And now when I'm
Yeah.
seeing this as I'm writing this down, I'm like, that makes sense. I wish we had had the conversations like what you're saying because then we could have seen it. But it was more like then we
Right.
react and act out and start in this yelling match. And we
Yeah.
both wanted
Yeah.
because then if you think about it, we both wanted to be together and have experiences. He wanted them at home with people with me at the home so that it would look
Right.
nice and everything. I wanted it with him in a different
Yeah.
setting, experiencing it with the memory. And so, in a way, what you're saying is that it's like we
Right.
both want the same thing, just in different places and ways that
Yes.
looks. But I never knew this. This is the first time as you're saying this, I'm
Yeah.
getting aha moments like pinging in my brain right now as you say this. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It just allows you to take that
Yeah.
step back and to release yourself from the shame. And unfortunately, in a dynamic, and it is often that the man is the accumulator and the woman, wants to spend and nurture and create experiences for the family. And so much of the personal finance dialogue is around save, save, save. And I mean, a lot of them have been written in the last 30 years where there's been a, kind of ever improving housing market and a lot of bull markets and that's great. But the reality is, finances ebb and flow and experiences. I think a lot of us learned through COVID. I know for me, it's like I'm never going to not go to a concert again or go on a travel opportunity because for 2 years that was taken away. It was the first time I realized, like, what if I never get to
Right.
that location? What if I never see that
Right.
artist perform? Um, and I felt regretful because often I have canceled things because it's like, oh, it's not the right time. And so it's a balance. There are financial realities, but it's both parties in the marriage need to offer each other the respect that you're both bringing your best to the table. And often opposites attract because, look, if two romantics are married to each other, they will Europe and Italy and the food and the shrimp and the lobster, and then they'll look in their bank account and there will be nothing left. So I think often we're drawn to the opposite because it's a nice balancing
Yeah.
effect in a marriage. But it is why there's so much friction. And again, in Christian couples, they can each point to passages in the Bible saying, lilies of the field, look, they're just taken care of. It's awesome. Or you better
Yeah.
toil or you won't
Right.
eat. I mean, you can always find a passage that supports your way of thinking. It's so much more productive to say, and this can work with children, this can work with business partners, this can work even with discussions with your own financial planner by saying, look, I get that you're saying I should save this much. I need to enjoy
Right.
my life. And so, I believe in living in the now, knowing that I won't have as much later, but it's a
Right.
conscious decision. Like, if as long as it's a conscious decision, you can make anything work. But money languages, particularly in romantic relationships and marriages, it just helps you take that you're cheap, you spend too much. Remember when you spent all that money at
Right.
like it eliminates that and it allows you to take each other's personalities into account in a way that's a
Yeah.
little less
Jen, that is
threatening.
so good. Wow. I mean, I could talk with you for like hours, which we will. I'll probably call you after this interview and go, we're going for apps. Put on your best outfits. Let's go. Honestly, because it's so good. I'm learning. I learned so much. I mean, I've got tons of notes. Jen, I know there are people listening who are like, I need to get a hold of Jen. I need some help. How can they do that? Best way to get in touch with you.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. You can come over to themidlifeedit.com and you can reach out to me there. I've got a free community, I've got a bunch of coaching freebies. And then if you're more interested in like, divorce work or money work, I can link you to this stuff. So all my contact details are on
Incredible.
themidlifeedit.com.
Jen, seriously, what a pleasure. I loved having you with me on our SOS Summer of Strength. Like, honestly, for anybody who's like, even for me, I'm like, oh my goodness, I wish I had Jen during the time that I was going through my own separation and divorce. Um, Honestly, and I'm so proud of what you're doing, really helping women in this very difficult, scary, shameful time. And I love how you've just sort of switched things and flipped things on their head about having some more power and choice for me as a woman. I love how you identified shame and that we don't live there in the shame anymore, right? Like I think that's a big thing that women,
Yeah.
especially in the church and Christian women, about divorce and they hide it. And I think it's just powerful what you've said. You
Yeah.
like empowering us back to kind of take charge of our lives to make wise decisions financially, to ask the questions and not let other people tell
Yeah.
us what to do or what they think. It's just like, actually no, I have resources and things that I can ask and not be ashamed about, and I think what you're doing is amazing, so thank you.
Yeah, and there's great group programs I can connect you with, like Betrayal Trauma
Oh,
Recovery is a group program you can access over Zoom. I'm friends with one of the coaches there. It's, Christian based, and it is terrific for women going through divorce, wanting to be in a in container. It's less expensive than hiring a private divorce coach, so I can always direct, listeners to resources that can help them because you don't have to go through
mhm.
this alone. And the shame needs to be taken out of the equation. You've got enough to deal with without
Right.
having shame on top of it. Money shame, divorce shame,
Yeah.
there's no room for that. We just need to
Oh,
heal and move
thank you,
forward.
Jen. And I'm so glad that you emailed me those many years ago and that we connected that way. That story still, I hear that.
Can you believe it? It's been a decade. I got a thing on Facebook saying that I've known you for 10 years or whatever, like within the month.
No,
I
I
was like,
can't
can you
believe it.
believe
I
it?
can't believe it.
A
But I
decade.
know, and
A
I'm so glad. And
decade.
all the things we met. You're a co-host on See Hear Love. Oh man, that season with your thoughts were like some of the most powerful shows that See Hear Love has ever done. Just with your, I think what was beautiful is that you understanding culture and people, and just your honest, thoughtful, um, sharing into the conversations with a different flavor and language was so good for us at that time in our in our own journey and growing a See Here Love. And I've always appreciated.
Well, I love you having like just the fact you make space for my voice because I mean I was brought up outside of the kind of traditional Christian culture. I take a very different,
Yeah.
very liberal view to it, which may shock some people. But I think we've been able to have some
Hmm.
interesting discussions as a result. So I commend you for bringing on and
Thank
amplifying
you.
different
Thank you. Appreciate
voices.
that. That means a lot coming from you, Jen. So thank you so much. And to our listeners and viewers, as you may be navigating a separation, impending divorce, or in the throes of divorce, and you may be in the fetal position, in a fog, or you're feeling like you're spiraling out of control with your finances, this is the encouragement what Jen said. Know that you can change your money story, that you're not alone, that there are resources there for you, that you can do this, that you do not need to live with shame and under shame. Know that. And also know that while you're navigating through this, today is not your forever. You will get through this, and you are seen, heard, and deeply loved by God. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of our SOS Summer of Strength series with Jen Lawrence. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.